I'm DJ Diya Anantharaman, music director and radio host of Unearthly Machine at KUCR Riverside 88.3, and I'm here with Julia Holter. Julia released her most recent album, Something in the Room She Moves, in March via Domino. We have convened today to chat. Good morning, Julia. It's
Good
so lovely to
morning.
see you. How are you
Hi.
doing on
I'm
this
good.
fine April morning?
Good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Let's start from the beginning. I did some digging and learned that you studied composition and electronic music, and that your earlier work was born out of bedroom recordings and was inspired largely by literature, namely the works of Virginia Woolf and Frank O'Hara. Can you tell me a little bit more about your musical background and how it informs your artistic philosophy to this point?
Yeah, I started making music as a late in my late teens, and I was in a really nice high school in LA that had a lot of it had we were doing like music theory and stuff. So I kind of got into composition that way, like writing for music for people to play, but I wasn't really a performer. And then I kind of was doing composition for a few years in college, and then kind of came upon recording and started to enjoy singing for the first time. And so that's how and then I got, yeah, kind of just got really sucked into recording myself, and ultimately then became a performer of my own music. And I think ever since I've been making music that is kind of still kind of in that same vein of this of like what I was interested in when I first started making music, which is like timbre, and like interested in not so much not so much like telling a story in my music, like as much as like exploring feelings and getting across certain feelings and textures and in music, like a little more like the substance of the sound, and focused on that more than um like narrative songwriting, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of this album is very fluid and elegant, especially with the expansive soundscapes. I love the sweeping cascades of instrumentals paired with your evocative vocals. And there are some really utopian arrangements on this project that have me as a listener transported to like another glowing realm. Can you tell me a little bit about your creative process on this album, along with its sonic and emotional landscapes and how they show up through some of your songwriting, vocal, and instrumental choices?
I guess I mean, whenever I start making music, I generally don't know what I'm going to do. There are certain things that are kind of abstract that are maybe inspiring to me, but I always am just sort of improvising ideas. And I do that often at the keyboard with my microphone, and just trying out like chords, and while also singing at the same time, and pressing record. And just like most of it is usually not good, but then there's sometimes little bits that I hold on to and develop. So that's how I work on a lot of my music, not all of it though. That's how I worked on some of the song of many of the songs on this record. And what emerged as I was making, as I've kind of parsed through these like improvisations I do, and found certain one thing or two compelling. There's sort of a point where maybe you kind of see, or you don't see how, but you can feel that a couple of these different things could work together. And that's how I start to feel that there might be a record there.
Mhm.
And then it's a process of just, I'm kind of for a long time following, and not, I wasn't developing any particular song deeply. I was just trying I had a lot of different drafts for a long time. And a lot of the things that seemed to pop up were, I was really interested in working with Deb Hoff, who's played bass on my records for like over 10 years now. I guess since Loud City Song.
Mhm.
And I was really interested in working with her on fretless bass, where a lot of times in the past there's a lot of upright in my music, upright with double bass.
Mhm.
And she's an amazing upright player. But I wanted to. There was like a moment on Loud City Song. There's a song called In the Green Wild where she played a fretless and I like loved it, and I love fretless electric, fretless electric. So I thought it would be nice to kind of build the album around the fretless. Um Initially that was like like one of the first thoughts I had was having that kind of like electric flowing sound as a nice counterpoint to a kind of like flowing vocal. And I had certain like certain atmospheres in mind, I guess, like um yeah, trying to bring out certain feelings. I don't know, I was really like focused on like deep love, I guess, and like kind of like almost being inside the body, maybe kind of like inside, like in the heart or in the belly or in your throat or
Yeah.
I was like, I think a lot of that record, I think there's a lot of body in it. It was like in the middle, it was the height of the pandemic at this time, and I was pregnant, so it was a lot of like body, because the pandemic was a lot about bodies and keeping bodies apart so they don't spread viruses between each other. So like keeping away from your each other's breath, or like there's just a lot of like ruminating on the body during this time period. So and I also was pregnant, which was like very different experience for me than one I'd ever had. So yeah, it was one of those things where you're just the music maybe reflects that, but I don't know. Like that was what I was experiencing, or that was, yeah, this sort of like underwater or inside the body kind of sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with all the fretless, all the sliding, the glissando. I think that's very much just the ebb and flow of the body
Hmm.
embodies that. So I did
Yeah.
previously touch on the literary and poetic influences, but I also know that you were thinking about Studio Ghibli films, namely Ponyo. And while I was listening through Something in the Room She Moves, I noticed the transformative nature of the music. While it's grand and sweeping in many places, it's also very introspective and deeply internal, pairing with motifs of birth, death, and transitioning through different stages of being. The themes of deep love and reverence for both loved ones and their memories, as well as making something like music so carefully and intentionally, stood out to me. This
Hmm.
album read as a deep exploration of and devotion to transformation, and I'd like to know what were some of the main inspirations for this project. That could be other music, media, literature, spiritual occurrences, film, religious epiphanies, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of talked about already, like a lot of this record is just there wasn't a whole I wasn't really reading during this time in my life. I was kind of sleep deprived often as like a new parent. I was not really like a lot of times in the past I if I'm working on a record, I have like books all around me,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of like reading them all, and they kind of inspire me because words inspire me, and stories inspire me. But I think this was different. It was like I had never I'm not very like normally very in touch with my body, and I suddenly had to everything was about my body, and that was sort of, I think a lot of the record is kind of around that. And life and death. I had this horrific death of my nephew that happened within the same 2 years of my daughter being born. So I think there's just, and this is the period I was finishing the record, and I think there's just a lot of, that's like more like what's going on in the record. It wasn't like something I inserted in there. I think it just happens. It's just becomes part of it.
Yeah.
There was one there's one text by Helen Sixu, Writing Blind, which I sort of do. That is one text I mention in relation to the song Spinning, which is a, I guess, exploration, I could say, of this state of seeking passion, or seeking like the thing that will move you. Or it's sort of like a state of exploring a state of being. And in the case of that essay, Helen Sixu essay, there's this like, it's this like kind of urgency of finding this, the time, that finding the space of creativity, um this space of like this fertile, like fertile creative mind space. And there's this sort of it's all about the night being the time when we don't see, so our imagination can run free. And it has this really urgent quality to it. So that felt like a, I just drew upon that for the vibe of that song. And that sort of day and night imagery worked well, as I have a song, because I have a song Sun Girl, and there's this kind of day night thing going on in the record as a result, because you've got like the daytime as a, as this sort of, you're going outside with your eyes like squinting because it's too bright and everything's loud and like kind of intense, and you're kind of forced out of your comfort zone.
Like being born.
Yeah, sure, like being born. I didn't think of that, but that's true. And then, um, and then night is like that safe space of creativity where you're like able to like make stuff, like make a song or make. And this time period of my life, I was having a lot of trouble with finding that space where I could be creative because of the stuff going on, basically, and just big changes. So it's sort of like, to me, it was just this time period of kind of embracing change, but also like still seeking that like comfort zone of the things that are like important for me, like as an artist, I guess. It could be desire in any way. It could be desire in the creative world or desire in love. But it's that song, yeah, it's like, it's sort of trying to channel that.
Absolutely. Beautiful. I'm also really interested in the album artwork. I love the expressive colors and application of the medium on the album cover, and I'd love to know the story behind it and what it means to you.
Yeah, the album cover is a pre-existing painting by a childhood friend, Christina Quarles, a painting called Wrestlin'. It's probably on display somewhere in the world because Christina has a lot of her work being shown
Yeah.
all over the place because her work is amazing and people love it. And I've seen her work for years in galleries, but like I really struggled with thinking of an album cover for this record because in the past I would often do kind of layered photos. My friend Dicky Bato has done these really amazing photographs, and they're often like quite layered and and mysterious. For this record, and I was like trying to imagine what the cover would be as a photograph in any way, because I wanted this to feel, I wanted to kind of somehow capture visually that like visceral feeling of the record.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea of bodies somehow being there, but a photograph of bodies didn't feel right to me.
Mhm.
I kind of wanted it to somehow be kind of like visceral and like maybe a little bit like tactile or something. And I was like, well, I don't want to have like photographs of bodies. Like I didn't I wanted it to be almost be a little like maybe a little bit gnarly or like like a little like it could be like violent or it could be romantic or something, but then it was like perfect with this. I thought of Christina because Christina's work also again is actually quite layered, just like Dickie's in a very different way.
Mhm.
Um, and I also love like layers of color in my music, and I think that Christina's work is very like there's so many different textures going on, and there's often like in the case of Wrestling, this cover, it's kind of clear, there's like kind of quite clear that there's two figures, but sometimes there's like an extra hand or like in her work, like I think there maybe is like yeah, a limb or two that's a little like whose limb could that be? Or like on Wrestling as well. But generally, yeah, her work often is like it's capturing who knows how many bodies in movement. Rather, it could be one body moving, or it could be um, more than one body, or it could be like five, or there's like all these like possibilities and that kind of infiniteness of her work I really liked. And I liked that it kind of feels like intimate with the bodies, but it also could be violent,
Mhm.
but it's maybe just like romantic.
Yeah.
But I just like really like I was very interested in this thing like when you have a baby, there's this thing called skin contact
Mhm.
where it's like important for you to like touch skin with your baby, and I've been really like into that and like oxytocin with this record, so somehow like bodies touching was like really important to me this record. So yeah.
Yeah. The music videos in this album are super memorable. Evening Moods video feels grounded with this use of interpretive dance by Tatiana Luboviski Akostan and natural landscapes as well as the homespun quality of the video. The video for Spinning is grand and enthralling, reminding me of the childlike wonder of watching a hot air balloon land or sitting under a colorful parachute. Both videos seem to have this running theme of embodying the vastness and beauty of one's surroundings while maintaining a deep curiosity and love for the process of being creative. Can you tell me a little bit more about the choices to include these visuals in your music videos and how they function in tandem with the album's themes?
Yeah, Sun Girl was the first video. Um, and that was Tammy Wynn did that one, and it's this incredible animation. Um, and that was I mean basically I sent Tammy this sort of like vibe and feeling of what Sun Girl was for me, and I sent her the album cover, Christina Quarles's painting, and Tammy took those kind of like color color general color palette and had a really came up with a really cool premise, which was there's this figure that's like wandering around in the video, and it's when it looks at the sun, it dreams and has these like psychedelic dreams, and that was the premise. And so, I mean, she just ran with it and made this video, and I didn't. The only like real involvement I had was that I sent her the song and sort of like what the song is for me. And that's generally true. I mean, I don't usually control the videos that much. But sometimes the editing and stuff, if I'm in it, for better for worse. but like, yeah, the next one was spinning, which was a really brilliant concept. Kind of similar thing where I just sent them the song. I sent so this was Nicola and Juliana Giraffe, the Giraffe sisters, and they came up with, based on the same thing where I sent them stuff about the song and the album cover, and they came up with, they again kind of worked with that color palette, and they came up with this beautiful idea of this parachute, and that was the kind of focal point of the whole video. And then we just kind of like moved around with the parachute. It's this urgent feeling, and it's just kind of like, I felt like the video did a good job of just like focusing on that urgent feeling, and
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of like, it's all like this parachute and this, yeah, this kind of like a little bit childlike quality, which feels nice because we're talking about kind of this primal like seek for like inspiration and imagination. So it felt like appropriate to me to like have their idea of parachute felt appropriate, and it was psychedelic because it had those crazy colors, so it was perfect. And kind of has that spinning quality innately because it's got like these like stripes in it.
Yeah.
And then Evening Mood, Dicky Bato, a frequent collaborator, really good friend of mine, and I just like, all I knew is that I thought it'd be really nice to have someone moving in this film, not myself, but someone who's like good at moving their body. It's not really something that I can claim. As I said earlier, I'm not very in touch with my body, so I think um so yeah, Tati did a beautiful job, Diki did a beautiful job on that, and they really just like he just shot them in various like beautiful spots in the Bay and Bay Area, I think. And I just loved all the movement and the hand stuff, and
Yes.
yeah, I really loved that.
Let's talk gear. What would you say was the most essential piece of gear to the particular sound of this album?
I think the fretless bass, Dev's fretless bass, which she performed and also wrote a lot of the bass lines, is the writer of those lines. And that's very essential. And then I think the second one, to me, for me personally, even though it's not on every track, for me it was the Yamaha CS60, which is a synthesizer that hard to come by, but a lot of studios still have them in LA at least.
Mm-hmm.
Or a few studios, yeah. Or CS80 is the most rare, but it's like the Blade Runner synth,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm obsessed with the synth. And
Yeah.
so I put it all over the all over this record, and I think that it might be the VST, like the MIDI version, that I might be a lot on my record Aviary, my last record, because it's, I mean, Aviary is even more so that kind of like Blade Runner
Mm-hmm.
feeling. And I don't know, I think that's just my synth. I just like love that synth sound.
Yeah.
So it's on any of my records. But yeah, it's well, it has a really nice ribbon controller where it's like blissy.
Yeah.
You can do blisses, and it also has just an extremely rich sound. And I am not like a synth wizard, so I can't explain to you in a technical anything beyond that technically, but I just like love messing with it. It
Yeah.
always sounds good.
Absolutely.
A lot of it's on Ocean, like the track Ocean.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only take 3 pieces of gear with you, what would they be and why?
Um, I'm not a big gear person. I've had my Nord stage for like 10, 12 years or something, and I just use that.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of old kind of, because I'm a hoarder, I have like all my old like Casios and like kind of broken equipment. But like but I mean, if I could acquire a Yamaha CS60 or Yamaha CS80, I would bring that. And then I do have a harmonium has been a big part of my life in certain
Mhm.
ways. So like an Indian style harmonium, and which I have, and my partner has a bunch too. maybe those two, but then we would want one non-keyboard instrument. So maybe oh, well, yeah, I have to bring my pedal steel. I have this pedal steel that I inherited from my
Ooh.
lovely grandfather,
Mhm.
Grandpa Ollie. Um, it's a really complicated instrument but I love this instrument. So I'm really hoping to learn it. So I guess I would bring it to the desert island and learn how to play it.
Yeah, just a long-term project.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's it for the questions. Thank you so much for chatting with me. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview. It's been really
Yeah,
great getting to learn about your process as someone who's been listening for quite a while now. So,
nice.
yeah,
Great.
very cool. All right. Thank you,
Awesome.
Julia.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. Thank you.